I recently did a video on how to become a pilot in the Army via the commissioned route, so this will be a video on how to be an Army helicopter pilot via the warrant officer route. And to be honest, if I could go back in time, this would have been the route that I would have chosen. So what's the difference between a commissioned officer and a warrant officer? And I will tell you, it is a lot. As a commissioned officer, your primary job is not to fly the aircraft first. It's to do other officer leading things first and then fly the aircraft when none of that is needed to be done. Whereas a warrant officer, their entire existence and life in the military is to fly an aircraft and be really, really good at flying it. So Damien, why didn't you go that route to begin with? Well, I tried, and I ended up experiencing a lot of shortfalls that I think a lot of current warrant officer applicants are finding, is that recruiters essentially don't want to deal with warrant officer applicants because the application process could take up to an entire year. So here's what you need to do in order to become a pilot in the U.S. Army as a warrant officer, which I think is the better of the two options. The requirements to be a warrant officer is very different than that to be a commissioned officer pilot. The most important requirement that's removed is a college degree. As a warrant officer, you do not need a degree in order to go in and fly a military aircraft. There's two ways you can become a warrant officer. Number one is the civilian route, where you're not even in the military at this point. You are off what we call the street to seat, or high school to flight school. You have no connections to the military. You're not in the military in any way, shape, or form. You are 100% a civilian trying to go directly into the military and directly into a cockpit to fly some sort of military aircraft in the Army. And option number two, you're currently enlisted in the US military. It actually doesn't even matter what branch you're in. I've seen people cross over from the Air Force as long as your contract was going to be up, or if you're currently in the Army with any MOS, it doesn't matter what your MOS is. The Army Warrant Officer Aviation Warrant Officer Program does not require you to have a feeder MOS. For example, basically every other warrant officer job requires you to have had previous experience in a prior job that has something to do with your current warrant officer job. For example, if you want to be a military intelligence warrant officer, a very specialized warrant officer, you have to have had military intelligence enlisted experience. Aviation, you don't need any of that. All of this information can actually be found on the U.S. Army Warrant Officer Recruiting website. I'm going to link it down there. You can go there and check it out. It's going to have essentially everything that I'm telling you and walk you through the entire process and put you in contact with a warrant officer recruiter that can help you through the process. And just bear with them because the process is a very long one. So what do you need for the process? So the very first thing you need to do is take what's called the SIFT test, or the SIFT exam. This exam will measure your core competencies, your judgment, your cognitive skills, and it'll give you a score that'll give the Army a good idea of your aptitude to succeed in flight school. You can find study guides of this test online, and I don't know how they do it, but the study guide is usually really good and almost a direct reflection of the exam itself. So I would take the study guide and studied for about 2 to 3 weeks is what I did, and then I went and took the exam and did really well on it. Do you have to have prior experience in flying? No. Do you have to have current aviation knowledge? No. You don't have to have any experience. It's an aptitude test that'll just be able to tell your aptitude or your likelihood that you'll do well in learning the aviation material that'll be provided to you in flight school. How do you schedule it? There's a couple ways that I know of. Number one is you can go to find a recruiter and ask them to schedule you one. MEPS is usually a good location that'll provide this exam. If not, a current university that has an ROTC program, an Army ROTC program, will have a SIFT schedule usually once a semester, and you can come in and you can take the exam with them as well. The second thing you'll need is an Army Class 1A flight physical. This will probably be the most thorough physical you've ever done. They will check literally everything. They will dilate your pupils, take your blood, they will check everything. It's usually an entire day process, and you can schedule this through a couple means. Number one is your local recruiter. They can take you to MEPS to get it done there. And number two, you can contact Fort Rucker and they'll tell you where you can go get a Class 1A flight physical done. So here are some of the basic qualifications to be an Army Aviation Warrant Officer applicant. Number one is the age. You have to be at least 18 years old, but not have passed your 33rd birthday. So if you're older than 33, yes, they do give waivers, but it's on a case-by-case basis. And I don't know how they decide who to give waivers to and who to not. You'll have to take the ASVAB and have a GT score or a general technical score of 110 or higher. Number three, you'll have to take the SIFT and get a SIFT score of a 40 or higher. And number four, you'll have to have a high school diploma. I thought that one would be pretty common knowledge, but you have to have a high school diploma. Number 5, you must be a US citizen. Number 6, you have to have the ability to obtain a secret security clearance. Number 7, you have to pass the flight physical. And number 8, you cannot have been eliminated from any other military flight school. Meaning if you've gone to the Air Force flight school, Navy flight school, whatever flight school it was, if you were kicked out or eliminated for whatever reason, you cannot join the Army Aviation Warrant Officer Program. The service obligation is now 10 years. It used to be 6 until the Army started losing all of its pilots to the airlines, and they decided the best way to fix the Army's pilot shortage is to change the service obligation from 6 to 10 years. In my opinion, this is the worst possible thing you could possibly do, because less of you would be interested in joining something for 10 years versus 6, instead of getting more of you incentivized to joining. I think they've done the complete opposite. Anyways, it's 10 years. So understanding that if you are selected and you do decide to go to Army Flight School, you will owe the Army 10 years. The next thing you will need is letters of recommendation, a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6. Here's my advice to you, is to get a letter of recommendation from a CW3 or higher, or an 04 or higher. Typically, the field grade letters of recommendations are what the board will be looking for. So how do you find these letter of recommendations? Well, you just reach out. You find people wherever on social media, you send them a message. If they don't qualify to write your letter of recommendation, chances are pretty high that they know someone who does. And typically they will link you up with this individual. This individual will call you, maybe do like an interview and get to know you before they write you your letter of recommendation. But for your packet, you'll need a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6. Don't have more than 6, because I guarantee they're probably not going to read all 10 if you put them in there. The next thing you'll need is a resume. You'll just put this together with whatever your experience is on. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. Just put together a resume that's got all of your relevant information and things you've done to this point. Next is a typed essay from you that says why you want to be a warrant officer aviator. I didn't do this, so I can't really give you any suggestions or recommendations on what to put in there, what it should say, but just tell them exactly why you want to be an Army aviator. I would make it probably one of the best essays you've ever written, because this will literally probably determine the rest of your life. So I would put some time into it, maybe get some help and some people reviewing it and looking at it before you submit it to the board. Next, you'll need your educational transcripts from whatever high school you went to. If you have any college transcripts, throw those in there as well. The official transcripts though, so make sure you request official transcripts to put into your board packet, and that is pretty self-explanatory. And lastly, the last thing that goes into your board packet is your official SIFT results, your official SIFT score, and you want to have at least a 40 on the test. It's a pass-fail, so if you do better, if you max the test out, you're going to be looked at essentially the same as a candidate that just barely passed. It's really a pass-fail score, but still at the end of the day, do your best to try to get the highest score that you possibly can by studying with a study guide that you can find on Amazon. I'll link one of those below as well. Once you have all of these things that I've just mentioned, you're gonna put it together in one packet and you're going to submit it to a board. The MOS, or what does MOS stand for? Military Occupational Specialty, that you're going to apply for is a 153 Alpha. That is an Army helicopter pilot. That MOS is an Army helicopter pilot, and the board is held every 2 months. I'm gonna link the board schedule down below so you can check it out. I'm also gonna put it up on the screen here. Every 2 months, there's a board selecting Army aviation applicants to be Army pilots. Not only is there a board schedule, but there's a schedule with the deadline for when they need the packet, the deadline for when they need the corrections, and the dates for when they're gonna post the results from the board. And to be honest, that is the entire process to becoming an Army helicopter pilot with no experience or nothing. Everything that I just said, you have to put them together into a packet. I'm gonna link the website with the information, people you send it to, and once you send it to them, you just sit and wait, and in 2 months, it's gonna be a yes or a no. And if it's a no, submit it again, make some changes, and submit it again in the next 2 months. If you found this information helpful or useful, let me know in the comments and I will make a video on literally anything that you guys want to see or hear. I'll do the research, I'll get you guys the answers, so let me know. Thanks for watching.